Greetings to all. Welcome to the lecture. The topic of analysis is International Day for Tolerance. In this lecture, we shall explain the key aims of the observance of International Day for Tolerance. This lecture shall discuss benefits of cultural diversity and various issues of multiculturalism with respect to the bigger debate on tolerance. This lecture shall also elaborate on how ideals of Ubuntu and Vasudeva Become are of timeless significance with respect to nurturing tolerance at national and international level. In 1996, the United Nations General Assembly, by the Resolution 15/95, invited UN member states to observe International Day for Tolerance, and that was on 16th November. The action followed up on United Nations Year for Tolerance 1995, proclaimed by the UN General Assembly in 1993 at the initiative of UNESCO, as outlined in the Declaration of Principles on Tolerance and follow-up plan of action for the year. Now, the theme when we look at International Tolerance Day, that is reading from the UNESCO 1995 declaration, that is tolerance is respect, tolerance is acceptance, tolerance is appreciation of rich diversity of our world's culture and our forms of expression and ways of being human. Let's understand tolerance. As pointed out, that 1995 Declaration of Principles on Tolerance, UNESCO mentioned that tolerance is respect, acceptance, appreciation of the rich diversity of our world's culture, our forms of expression and ways of being human. International Tolerance Day and every day, once again quoting from the remarks of UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres on the International Day of Tolerance in 2020. That is, let's advance human dignity. This is the bigger message of this day. Fight for racism and forge peace. Quoting from this very important belief that, of the remark of the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres on International Day of Tolerance 2020, that is, quoting from the statement, "It is my firm belief that we can help solve our biggest challenges by embracing diversity and respecting each other." Once again, this is from the statement of UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres' remarks on International Day of Tolerance 2020, that how tolerance is key to betterment of humanity, to ensure diversity is propagated, and above all that one person respects the other. Now, what is the importance of tolerance? UNESCO on the occasion of International Day of Tolerance 2020 pointed out, and once again quoting from this remarks of UNESCO official Twitter handle, that there are more than 7 billion ways of being human, but only one path to peace. And what is this path? Once again quoting from the UNESCO's remark on International Day for Tolerance 2020, it is through tolerance and understanding. Even historical texts also stood for tolerance. As we are discussing International Day for Tolerance, let's take an example of the Declaration of the Rights of Men and Citizens 1789, adopted by the National Constituent Assembly during the French Revolution. And its Article 10 way back in 1789 points out that no one shall be interfered with for his opinion, provided that their practice does not disturb public order as established by the law. So, the timeless significance tolerance has, right from Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizens 1788 adopted by National Constituent Assembly during the French Revolution, to UNESCO's Declaration on International Day for Tolerance. It can even be understood from United Nations statement, that is, practice tolerance and respect for diversity. What are they? These are the values which bring people together and make us all stronger. So, once again, we are quoting from important inputs that we got from UN Twitter hand update. Now, we all need to understand that variety of human behaviors, world cultures, fundamental freedoms, indeed this diversity makes the world, the planet more beautiful. And it is essential, it is also very important and significant to build up tolerance amongst the cultures and peoples. Tolerance implies respect for others' rights and freedoms. Tolerance is not only a moral duty but also a requirement of the present era. Further, that states should also make laws for equality and basic human rights for the promotion of tolerance and non-violence. Education is an important tool to pave the path of these desired results. Now, as we are talking about tolerance, this brings us to the next important aspect of cultural diversity. Cultural diversity, how important it is when we try to understand the important aspect of respect, recognition, acceptance of diversity. The word culture comes from the French term which comes from the Latin word colere, which means to tend, to grow, to nurture. This shows that culture, again quoting from the definition by anthropologist Cristina De Rossi, that is, cultural encompasses food, what we wear, how we wear it, language, music, what we believe is right or wrong, how we behave, and lot of other things. In this aspect, culture signifies our values, our norms, and how it is nurtured over a period of time. Now, this brings us to the next aspect of cultural diversity. Quite often as we read various literature from political theory to sociology to anthropology, English literature, cultural diversity is synonym with multiculturalism. Multiculturalism, as defined by Encyclopedia Britannica, quoting from this online definition, multiculturalism is the view that cultures, races, ethnicities, particularly those of minority groups, deserve special acknowledgement of their differences within a dominant political culture. What is the importance of cultural diversity then? Cultural diversity implies valuing each culture. Cultural diversity is essential to empower diverse groups. Cultural diversity is very significant with respect to the idea of celebration of differences. Multiculturalism is the way in which society deals with cultural diversity, both at national and at community level. What are the advantages of multiculturalism? And again, going by the assumption that how various cultures coexist, there is an assumption that society benefits from increased diversity through the harmonious coexistence of different cultures. Now, when we try to understand multiculturalism, there are two important theories. First is the melting pot theory, next is the salad bowl theory. The melting pot theory of multiculturalism assumes that various immigrant groups will tend to melt together, abandon their individual cultures, and that the melting pot theory of multiculturalism points out that they will become fully assimilated into the predominant society. In contrast to the melting point theory of multiculturalism, we have the salad bowl theory. But before we do that, let's understand the criticism of the melting pot theory of multiculturalism. It has been argued that this theory, presents ideas that somewhere work in a manner that reduce diversity, and that there are fears that it may cause people to lose traditions. The salad bowl theory of multiculturalism points out that people coexist but retain at least some of the unique characteristics of their traditional culture. So, we see that how cultural diversity, the bigger picture of multiculturalism, points out that what International Day of Tolerance stands for, that is, how essential it is to respect each other's differences. Tolerance is not only a moral duty, but tolerance, looking at the present scenario, it's also a requirement. And that both states and its various apparatus of education, media should work together to ensure equality, promote tolerance and to ensure desired results. And above all, that how United Nations statements and remarks have pointed out that tolerance is the virtue, the respect for diversity, how beneficial it is because it brings people together. It makes us all stronger. Now, as we are talking about International Day of Tolerance, we are debating cultural diversity's advantage, various theories of multiculturalism. Another important aspect here is how our philosophical texts point out towards the need for bigger picture of solidarity, which is so essential with the issues of tolerance. The African philosophy of Ubuntu, which means I am because we are, also highlights this very important inherent interdependence of our existence. The word Ubuntu comes from South African languages and it implies humanness. There are various interpretations of that, but one of the most important interpretation is that of humanness. Now, to have Ubuntu, it is, if you go by academic literature and various idols pointed out, to have Ubuntu is to be a person who is living a genuine human way of life, whereas to lack Ubuntu is to be missing on human and human excellence. Augustine Shute points out some very important aspects with respect to Ubuntu, and we quote from that work, our deepest moral obligation is to become more fully human, and this means entering more and more deeply into community with others. Ubuntu is said to include many of values, and some of the very important values that Ubuntu includes, that is community, respect, dignity, value, acceptance, sharing, social justice, fairness, solidarity, fulfillment, conciliation. So, all these things, they stand up for what is that is the idea of humanness, or what Augustine Shute points out, that our deepest moral obligation is to become more fully human. And this is why the African philosophy Ubuntu, signifying I am because we are, towards a bigger picture of interdependence of our existence and implying humanness. And this is where it is very essential to reflect on it, because respect, dignity, value, acceptance, humanness, fairness, morality, all of it are very essential with respect to the idea of tolerance, and very essential to revisit each time when we are deliberating on International Day for Tolerance. Vasudeva Become, one of the core philosophy of India. It is very important to reflect on Vasudeva Become when we are thinking about the idea of tolerance. We all know Vasudeva Become is the core philosophy. Become is the core philosophy of India. It implies that the world is one family. Now, significance of the philosophy is that it helps the world to come together as one family. And this aspect of embracing each other, of respecting each other, is very crucial to the bigger message of tolerance. As we all know that India is celebrating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav to commemorate the 75 years of its independence. The message of Vasudeva Become, that is earth as one family, world as one family, which is one of the core philosophies of Indian civilization since ancient times, and that the message of Vasudeva Become is one of the important themes also in the celebration of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav to commemorate 75 years of independence. Now, the idols of Vasudeva Become are not just limited to the philosophical aspects. Even at important global diplomacy summits, even at important international deliberating forums, time and again, world leaders have visited these ideals in order to emphasize on the important aspects of this core Indian philosophy. Let's take an example from the contemporary times at the World Economic Forum in Davos on 23rd January 2018. While welcoming the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji to deliver the keynote address at the plenary session of the World Economic Forum in Davos on 23rd January 2018, Professor Klaus Schwab, who is from the World Economic Forum, the President of the World Economic Forum, very eloquently put forward that, quoting from that opening remark, that is India's philosophy of world being one family, Vasudeva Become. It is closely aligned with the mission also of this annual meeting. And once again, this theme of World Economic Forum 2018 Davos, that is theme, creating a shared future in a fractured world. Now, just imagine at a time when global governance is witnessing new challenges, at a time when security, from ecology to pandemic to climate change to technological disruption to issues concerning populism and rollback of globalization, world is battling towards a chaos. And in that aspect, the chairman of the world, the president of the World Economic Forum, Professor Klaus Schwab, points out that the theme of creating a shared future in a fractured world can be very well dealt with, very well answered with the right solution offered by India's philosophy of looking at world as one family. Further, as we are reflecting on the International Day of Tolerance with respect to the message of Vasudeva Become, it is very essential that how this philosophy has guided the world. Now, once again, an example of that from the contemporary times, that is Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji's statement on the subject of creating a shared future in a fractured world in the World Economic Forum, that was on 23rd January 2018. Quoting from the important inputs that we got while during our research from mea.gov.in. Quoting from the remarks of the Indian Prime Minister, that is, India from one time immemorial, we continue to believe in uniting the mankind and not in dividing them or creating fissures. In ancient books written thousands of years ago in Sanskrit, Indian philosophers have said, Vasudeva Become. It means the world is one family. In essence, we all have been joined with each other like a family, and our destiny links us with a common thread. Further, quoting from Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji's statement in the World Economic Forum, January 23, 2018, that is, today, this concept of Vasudeva Become, the world is one family, is more relevant in bridging the gap and distances. But today, one serious thing is that there is lack of understanding among us to deal with the difficult challenges of this era. Once again, in the same statement, quoting from the important Indian prayer, the statement also points out that we all must work together, walk together. Our talents flourish simultaneously, and there is never any hatred between us. The great Indian poet of the last century and Nobel laureate Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore had imagined such a freedom of heaven of freedom, that is, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls. Quoting from the statement further, that let us together create such a heaven of freedom where there is cooperation and coordination and not division, divide and fracture. Let us all get the world rid from its cracks and unnecessary walls. So, at the root of Vasudeva is Vasudha, that is our earth planet, and therefore an extension of the Vasudeva Become, as we saw that right from guiding the world leaders on important international deliberating forums and summits, that how the integral unity of the world, by working on it, we can cater to several challenges of global governance. And this important philosophy is significant for various global problems, and environment is one of that. That how the philosophy of Vasudeva Become could guide countries to adhere to sustainable development goals, prevent biodiversity loss, and work towards mitigating the climate change. In 1994, UNESCO marked the 125th anniversary of Mahatma Gandhiji's birth, paving the way for the proclamation of 16th November as the International Day for Tolerance by the United Nations. The International Day of Tolerance is created as a way to commemorate the passing of the Declaration of Principles on Tolerance. That is, pointing out from the declaration, being able to accept one's other's differences can have a positive effect on one's other's well-being. Being tolerant removes one's self-imposed barriers. It paves way for enjoyment of greater inner peace. Tolerance leads to less stress and more happiness in the overall community. So, dear learners, when we talk about International Day of Tolerance, we must understand that how this day reaffirms the very important aspect, that is that we need to understand tolerance. International Day for Tolerance, this day which comes out of the UNESCO's Declaration of Principles on Tolerance, further with the follow-up plan of action for the year, tells us a very important thing, that is tolerance is respect, its acceptance, appreciation of the rich diversity of our world's culture. This day, with the bigger focus on the important issues 1995 Declaration of Principles on Tolerance mentions, that how this day works to the advancement of the cause of human dignity. And time and again United Nations has pointed out that by embracing diversity, by respecting each other, this can be an important aspect of securing world peace, of advancement of human dignity. Now, UNESCO, on the occasion of International Day of Tolerance, has also pointed out that diversity exists everywhere, but tolerance is the way through which the path of peace can be secured. Tolerance and understanding are therefore key to the world peace. We have historical texts from Declaration of Rights of Man and of the Citizen 1789 to several United Nations statements in the present times, wherein practicing tolerance and respect for diversity are important values which bind people together and above all make the humanity stronger. As we understand each other's differences, the aspect of cultural diversity too, culture, that is our norms, our values, and this cultural diversity which in turn asks the individual, the household, the organization, the nations to look into empowerment of diversity, to look into celebration of differences. Today, several international and national organizations are focusing on cultural diversity from workplace up till the most important policy apparatus. Further, cultural diversity brings the attention towards important issues of multiculturalism, that how coexistence of different culture can be factored in through increased diversity. There are various perspectives from melting pot theory to the salad bowl theory, but most important it is that how the various aspects of getting and bringing people together, factoring cultural diversity is definitely an important policy framework, definitely an important organizational aspect from nations, large organizations amongst others. The idea of tolerance also finds supports not only from United Nations observances, but from some very important philosophies. The African philosophy of Ubuntu, that is, I am because we are, the focusing on the moral duty of humanness is one of the important aspects. And today, at a time when world is looking towards the global governance aspect, wherein the global is connected to the local, and what is international has an implication on to the domestic, and what is domestic is related to what is international. The core Indian philosophy of Vasudeva Become, meaning the world is one family, this philosophy is being deliberated not only as a significant Indian civilizational ethos or important ancient Indian philosophy, but as a philosophy that can really show the way forward for the world. Vasudeva Become, that is, the world is one family. It is essential that how the idea of tolerance can be better propagated when we take each other like a family, when we try to understand that our destinies are linked together by a common thread. The idea of tolerance can be better met by understanding that one must believe in uniting the mankind. And yes, time and again, the ethos, the ideals of Vasudeva Become, the world as one family, has indeed worked to the advantage of getting people together, bridging the gap and distances, and work to the important aspect of ensuring tolerance. So, International Day of Tolerance, indeed a very significant day observed by the United Nations, celebrated by UNESCO's Declaration of Tolerance. The International Day of Tolerance is indeed a very significant occasion to reflect on cultural diversity, to look at the need for celebration of diversity, to look at the need for acceptance, and above all, the bigger aspect of how we must work on solidarity. We hope the lecture on International Day for Tolerance presented to you significant inputs and insights. We look forward to positive, encouraging feedback from you all. Thank you very much.